and welcome to another edition of ATL Prime Sports. I'm JJ Jurjevich. Joining me tonight is the one, the only Wayne Ridenauer in Memphis, Tennessee, our fabulous producer. No Todd Corder and no Larry Gardner tonight. Wayne, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really well, especially since my Texas Rangers were able to take the first two games down in Houston, and tonight they'll be playing in the ballpark. What do they call that stadium now?
Well, Globe Life.
Globe Life. Every time one of these new sponsors comes in there, they change the name of the stadium, and it throws me off. But at least that's the same team playing there.
Yeah, I'm doing well, not as well as those Philadelphia Phillies, though. Boy, up 2-0 on the D-backs and the NLCS, excuse me. Scoring 15 runs in those two games on 20 hits. Boy, those bats were on fire. Kyle Schwarber, a couple home runs in game two. Over in the ALCS, you nailed it. Rangers are doing well. Two up on the Astros. Playing game three right as we speak. First pitch is about to go underway. You can find us all at ATL Prime Sports on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and of course Apple and Spotify. Our personal Twitters at JJGetYouOne, at RWY Jr. for Wayne, at Corder Todd for TC Todd Corder, who is out on vacation, and at LG for real though for the PA voice of the Rome Braves, Larry Gardner, who is catching his son's football game in overtime. I hope they go get him.
Yeah.
What's on tap for tonight's show? The voice of Georgia State, Dave Cohen, joins the show, and we do a little NFL quick hits, turf versus grass, and a little dirty birds talk. And, of course, the pick six. And without further ado, we welcome our guest. Georgia State football is 5-1 overall, 2-1 in Sun Belt play, putting them in great position for the race to the conference championship game. With that in mind, the voice of the Georgia State Panthers, Dave Cohen, joins the show. Dave, it's good to have you on. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you guys doing? A lot different than it was when we were talking a year ago at this time, wasn't it?
It's a little
Very
bit more refreshing and exciting, and it's good for the city, Dave. It really is. Not only the city, the state. We're welcoming Kennesaw State, another FBS school next year. So this is all great. Talk of the town. And heck, that's my first question, Dave. If they went out, don't look now, but can we talk New Year's Six for the Georgia State Panthers? I mean, Air Force has to take care of business and lose one to UNLV coming up here in a couple weeks, or vice versa, drop another one down the schedule. But I mean, it's fairly realistic.
Well, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion right off the bat. I mean, we've got, to me, the gauntlet started last Saturday with the win over Marshall. We're on the road this week at Louisiana, facing the Raging Cajuns. Then a short turnaround, got to go down to Statesboro next Thursday night, play Georgia Southern at Paulson Stadium, which is always an interesting road trip. Then you've got James Madison, you've got Appalachian State, you've got a road game at LSU and a road game at Old Dominion. So I like your enthusiasm and your, but we've still got a lot of work to do before we get to that point. This second half of the season is going to be quite challenging. But I'll tell you what, it's so much better to go into the second half of the season playing the way we're playing and playing the way we've played as opposed to the way the season ended up starting a year ago.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Wayne.
We kind of dropped our ball last week here in Memphis versus a very tough Tulane team, and it's looking like Tulane is the James Madison of the American Conference. What can you tell us about James Madison and what has gotten into them?
Well, they were pretty good last year. We played against them and lost in a game that, some would say was a woulda, coulda, shoulda up in Harrisonburg, Virginia last year. For them right now, they're 6-0, and they are frustrated by the rule that you've got to take a 2-year transition before you're eligible for a Sun Belt Conference championship or maybe even a bowl game. Because they made, of the 4 schools the Sun Belt brought in last year, Marshall, Old Dominion, Southern Miss, James Madison, of the four, they were the only one that was an FCS program making the jump. So they have the 2-year transition, 1-year transition out of FCS, 1-year transition into FBS. So they've been jockeying with all kinds of political moves here to try to step over that rule. I don't think it's going to end up happening, but I think the one way that they'll be able to make a bowl game, if there's not enough eligible 6-win teams, then they could end up, filling one of those spots. But they were loaded talent-wise last year. That we're talking about a perennial top 5, top 10 FCS program before they decided to make the transition to FBS in the Sun Belt. So, I look at James Madison the same way I looked at Appalachian State and Georgia Southern when they moved from the Southern Conference to the Sun Belt Conference. Talent-wise, for the transition to Group of 5, they were more than ready talent-wise to be able to come in right away and compete, and they have shown that they're able to do that. Again, they're 6-0, and they can play with the big boys. They've got the largest budget, from what I understand, of the 14 schools in the Sun Belt. So from a talent standpoint, from a financial standpoint, from a facility standpoint, they came in completely ready for the transition and the ability to compete in the Sun Belt Conference, and even with teams that they're playing outside of their non-conference games as well.
It's very interesting what the Dukes are doing. Talking about jockeying some politics, don't know if you've heard the news or not. Current college quarterback Caleb Williams has mentioned he wants part ownership of the team that drafts him. Have you heard about this, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, nothing's, in this modern day of Twitter and Facebook and innuendo and rumors, and just look at the, transitions that have been made, or the, advancements that have been made in college athletics in the last couple of years. Did you ever think we'd be paying players?
No.
Did you ever think NIL money would be available? Did you ever think there'd be a press release that University of Utah is awarding all 85 scholarship football players a 1-year lease on a brand new, like you're wearing the shirt, on a brand new Ford F-150 truck? I mean, is that NIL? That's not name, image, likeness. That's just basically paying players. It's basically awarding players.
Yep.
So already we've kind of transitioned away from what the initial intent of NIL is or was. So my point is, nothing surprises me anymore. He better be a good player. I mean, to come out and want partial ownership, and that's not going to happen.
No,
it's not going to happen.
No, it's not. I was listening to local boys here, 680, and they had I didn't catch the guest name, but he was saying no, he's going to get his 4-year or 5-year contract, or 4-year contract with a 5th-year option, just like every other rookie in the first round. If that's where he's drafted, will get. And it, it's crazy. I saw that they all got Dodge Rams, and it's just absolutely crazy. Speaking of, before we get more into Georgia State here and their incredible season, I do want to. We didn't have you on last week when Coach Stoops made some incredibly bold comments about the University of Georgia, and speaking of our alumni, maybe they should pitch in more, or something along those lines. Your thoughts on a coach telling the alumni to pitch in more? I personally, with the temperature of college football, I don't know if he's too far-fetched. You know what I mean?
Well, in this modern day of college athletics, everything is about, who, what, and or where is the next revenue source. Whether we're talking, to fund name, image, likeness, whether all 85 scholarship players are receiving use of a vehicle, whether a player, wants ownership heading into the next stage of his career. It's really just all about fundraising now. And that's why we're moving closer and closer to replicating professional sports at the collegiate level. Right now, it's at the highest level of the collegiate level, in my opinion. But no, I did see those comments, and I guess you could say that. I mean, every coach at every school. Let's just take the SEC for example. They all receive the same amount of money from television revenue, but they all don't have the same fan base. On a given Saturday, Georgia home game draws over 100,000. Alabama's over 100,000. Vanderbilt is lucky to get to 30,000.
Yeah.
So Kentucky's not selling 100,000 tickets. They're closer to being Vanderbilt in football as far as the way they draw than they are a Georgia or an Alabama or a Florida or a Tennessee school like that, or a Mississippi State or whatever. So again, it always ultimately comes back to money. If Kentucky had the same amount of money that Georgia does, then this is a rhetorical question. Would they be a top 5 program? Would they be attracting the top talent across the country to come to Lexington to play for the Wildcats in football? Would they would obviously have the money to have amongst the best facilities in the country. But I don't know if they had the money, if they just had that flat amount of money that Georgia has, would they have the same results that Georgia has? Would they have the same results that Alabama has? I don't know, but everybody is just chasing more money. And it's even happening at the group of 5 level as well. It's just an arms race. Everybody wants, at the group of 5 level, at least what I see in the Sun Belt, a number of Sun Belt schools have built the covered open air practice facilities. Now everybody thinks you've got to have an open air practice facility. They're nice, but a couple of schools get them. Now everybody else thinks they've got to get them. In other words, it never ends with the wants, the needs, the desires, the continuous seeking out new revenue streams. Do you remember years ago, schools were not allowed to serve alcohol on-campus facilities?
No.
That's not the case anymore. Hey, it's another revenue stream. We're going to sell alcohol, beer and wine, or I don't know if they're selling hard liquor. But before, it was not allowed on college campuses or a college athletics facility. Now, those barriers have come down. Little by little, guys, the barriers that we grew up with are falling by the wayside, and the constant, ongoing search for new revenue streams to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, it's a constant facilities race battle, whichever you want to call it. Let's flip over to Georgia State, back to the unbelievable season. The offensive side of the ball, very well balanced. Over 230 passing yards a game, top 40 in rushing yards a game at 185. It's Do-It-All Granger, 3 total touchdowns last week. Let's talk about this offense moving forward, Dave, and what we can expect, and like you said, the meat of the schedule.
Well, the one number that I always keep an eye on during the course of our radio broadcast for us, because it is one of those telling statistics on the offensive side as to how well you're playing, and that's the third down conversion number. And going into the Marshall game, Georgia State was at 51%. You can look at that third down conversion number, and it relates directly most of the time to time of possession. So the more you keep your offense on the field, that means good things are happening. You're converting on third down. What are your red zone numbers? I mean, Georgia State has decent red zone numbers as well. Are you productive when you get inside the 20, or are drives stalling? You saw what happened in the Troy game. 2 interceptions, a fumble at the 1-yard line. It was one of those games where the numbers that I keep an eye on, for me personally, during the course of a broadcast, were not adding up to what it needs to be successful. Darren's numbers are great. We've talked about him since he got here. After the 2019 season, he's a dual threat. He can hurt you with his legs. He can certainly hurt you with his arm. He bulked up 15 to 20, 25 pounds during the offseason with a brand new strength and conditioning coach. He really kind of is. I don't want to say he's a new player. He's the same Darren Granger. He's just a bigger, stronger version of what we saw last year than what we saw the first year that he was here. He's completing right now 68% of his passes. 1,421 yards. He was fantastic against Marshall. 21 of 31, 234, a touchdown. He rushed for 62 yards. And it's a nice balance, with what he does in the air and what he does on the ground. It's a nice balance with what you get from Marcus Carroll, who assumed the mantle as number one running back. And Marcus had a fantastic game against Marshall. And it was, the thing that I liked about the Marshall game was it was a showdown between two of the Sun Belt's top running backs, Marcus Carroll for Georgia State and Rasheen Ali, who scored twice against us for Marshall. But Marcus ended up with, his 10th rushing touchdown of the season, 159 yards. Combine that with what, Darren does on the ground, and then throw in fantastic outings by Robert Lewis and Talik Williams, and our offense was cruising. And of course, it all starts at the offensive line. A lot of that doesn't happen if those guys aren't getting it done up front and blocking and opening up holes. Guys up front have been getting it done. Even in the Troy game, the problems in the Troy game were the 2 interceptions and the fumble, the untimely fumble. And then defensively, we've been playing well. Chad Staggs coming in as the new defensive coordinator. Again, as I said, did not have to rearrange all the pieces, but has made some changes. For example, moving John Trey Hunter from outside linebacker to inside linebacker. He's now our leading tackler with 47 tackles on the year. 2 of the newcomers have come in and been impact players. Ty G. Leach, who's second in tackles for Georgia State with 37, including 5 for a loss and an interception, and Gavin Pringle coming in. Both those guys have come in and been impact players. And the last thing that I'll mention, aside from the fact that the kicking game is spot on so far, Georgia State in the Marshall game, and his name is Cam Marshall, plays on special teams, blocked a punt that Isaiah Guy recovered and ran in for a touchdown. Georgia State had not done that since 2013, a block punt. So the Marshall game, offense firing on all cylinders, defense for the most part firing on all cylinders. Kicking game, both punting and place kicking, has been good. And special teams even had a special night against Marshall. It's when I mentioned a little while ago, we're starting to run the gauntlet a little bit. We've got a late night or an 8 p.m. kickoff East Coast time at Louisiana Lafayette on Saturday night. Quick turnaround because we're at Georgia Southern next Thursday night, again on national television. So Georgia State has been on national television now. How many weeks in a row? Marshall?
That would 3 weeks. That'll be 3.
It'll be 3 in a row that Georgia State football will be featured on national television, as well as the radio network. Don't forget the radio guys. But the fact that they're off to a 5-1 start, has made people take a closer look once again at the program. Starting to get that feeling that we had in the second half of the season 2 years ago when we started out 1-4 and then won 7 of our last 8. That feeling is the same.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch the Panthers this season, folks. If you haven't checked them out, do so. Really fun program to watch. But please check out Dave on 88.5 and the various other apps and ways to watch it. Again, we'll flip over. We're talking about turf versus grass and the amount of injuries on it. Your thoughts on that real quick, Dave, and then we'll get you out of here. Your turf versus grass, do you have an opinion on it? You've seen a lot of football through the years. Do you see more injuries on turf, grass? Do you have an opinion on it at all?
Well, not really. I mean, Georgia State installed. It's interesting. I watched them take up the grass or the turf or the actual turf from what was at Turner Field when it was still a baseball facility, and then retrofit it into being a football stadium with the turf, with turf. I don't recall in the 5 years that we've been playing there that we've had any injuries there that have been the fault of the playing surface. So I don't know if, I'm sure that certain players have a preference, but you'd have to go ahead and poll football players and or coaches to see which one they like better. Personally, I don't really have an opinion on it, other than I think it's easier to maintain turf than it is actual grass, obviously. But yeah,
No, I
you have to probably ask players. That would be a good question now for players in this modern day of the modern turf that they put down, unlike, the early days of AstroTurf that was like green cement. It's a lot different now. And you'd have to ask, players, running backs and receivers, how does it affect their footing, if it affects their footing? Maybe I'll ask that this week as I had to practice on Thursday.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's a big topic in the pro game, as you know. The NFL owners got together and started talking about it, and it seems like it's about half and half. A lot of owners like the grass, a lot of owners like the turf. So, figured I'd ask someone who's been around the game a lot longer than I have. Wayne, I think you had a comment too.
Well, yeah, and in college it's a little different because you don't have an owner per se. Owners can make the decision when they've built these new stadiums, a la Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Even though the roof opens, it's a turf field.
Yeah.
So, Atlanta elected not to build what we'll call an open air stadium as opposed to some of these other stadiums, Buffalo, New England, Miami, so on and so forth, that have built open air stadiums with no roof. In some instances, some are grass, some are turf, but you'd have to ask owners, and players what their preference would be.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, Dave, if you remember back in the early mid 80s, what the artificial turf was like back then. But I was in the marching band at Memphis State. And one of the things I remember about that type of turf back then was if you went out there in street shoes and you just twisted when you were walking, slightest way your feet would slide right out from under you. I mean, the edge of your shoe would catch on that grass or something. So the turf they have nowadays is way, way more advanced. And I think they've come a long, long way. Even though I'm the type of guy that prefers grass, I'm sure that the consistency of that playing surface, the coaches and players would rather have the turf.
Yeah. And even down at the high school level, I'm sure it comes down to funding. Is it more cost efficient to keep grass, or is it more cost efficient for a high school if they can afford it, or certain colleges if they can afford it, to get into the artificial turf business? I think it's a case by case basis.
Yeah, that new artificial turf has a funny thing about it, though. To make it feel more like real grass, it has soil underneath it. They have these tiny little black beads that are all in there. And my son was telling me when he was marching on the new field out there at the Liberty Bowl, when he was in the marching band, that this little black sand or whatever it is would get all down in his shoes.
Yeah, they have that at Georgia State too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's new technology. I know down at the local high school, my good friend's the head coach down there and defensive coordinator. I played with the running DB's coach. They have wood chips embedded in there now, so it's a little cooler, they say, than I think it's like ground up shoes. I think it's rubber. But a lot of schools use
little tiny rubber pellets.
Yeah.
Yep. I reference like a track, but even more fine than the track material that you see. Well, Dave, our listeners, this is Dave Cohen. You can check him out on Twitter, or I should say, formerly known as Twitter, now X, at GA State Voice. Dave, tell our listeners how they can catch your voice Saturday night at Louisiana Lafayette.
Well, 7:30 airtime with the Panther pregame show, countdown to kickoff. Kickoff just after 8 p.m. Eastern time from Cajun Field in Lafayette. Our flagship in Atlanta, 88.5 FM WRAS, 50,000 watts. You can get us all over the place. Gainesville, Georgia, 97.5 FM WGTJ. Online, lowcountryradio.com and WRBJradio.com. You can download the Georgia State Athletics mobile app, and you can also download and hear us on the TuneIn Radio app. So we invite everyone to join us on Saturday night for Georgia State and the Ragin' Cajuns of Louisiana from Lafayette. Should be a good one.
Should be. Go Panthers. Dave, thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to the call Saturday evening.
All right, appreciate it. Always good to talk with you guys. We'll see you next week.
You as well. See you, Dave. Dave Cohen, voice of the Georgia State Panthers, football, baseball, and basketball. When we get them on next week, we'll have to get more into that basketball topic, as I wanted to go over some of those college topics we were talking about, Wayne. And, I found it interesting that Dave didn't have much of an opinion on it. Seeing how much football he has seen, but hey, I'm kind of right there with them. There's a lot of players that like the speed aspect of the turf, and we'll get more into that right here, right now in our NFL Quick Hits, and that is exactly where we go in our show. Week 6 is come and gone. Let's go around the NFL with a few quick hits, and that's our next one. It's turf versus grass. The NFL wants a more unified playing surface, Wayne. Will we ever see that? I don't know if we'll ever see it, Wayne. I want to say I hope so, or at least where it's 15 artificial turf and 15 grass, or whatever the split is. I would like to see a lot more balance because, as I was just mentioning, I have a couple friends at the high school level, and they were a little scared of non-contact injuries because the grass, when you cut in it and your cleats stick and you have a bad cut or you cut too hard, it gives a little bit. The grass rips up, a chunk of turf comes up from the earth. You slide down and nothing happens. Well, it's the complete opposite on field turf and the artificial turf. Your cleats get farther in and your joints, your bones, everything locks up. And we've seen some of the most gruesome injuries in this debate. And there's a little table here from sportsinfosolutions.com from 2017 to 2020. It was injuries by game, and these are injuries of players that left the field per game. And it looks like they were up about 9.2%. So it's pretty impressive. Some of the numbers out there. Again, there's lots of different numbers, but some coaches, again, personal friends of mine that are high school coaches, like grass. I tend to like grass better. I think it pops better on television when it's done up right. But again, the topic came up at this year's NFL's owners meetings, which happened this week. The players want grass because the NFLPA says it's simply safer. And the vice president of health and safety of the NFL, Jeff Miller, says it's hard to make a strong recommendation against any one thing. So that's why, to answer the question, I don't think we'll ever see a unified playing surface in the NFL unless everybody just unites against this one issue on turf versus grass. When you just mentioned it a little bit with Dave, what are your thoughts? You said you marched on grass. Your sons marched on turf. It's pretty interesting out there. I've played on both. I played on AstroTurf at the old Georgia Dome, Wayne, and so I know exactly what you mean with tennis shoes on the AstroTurf. And then I also played on the very first year of field turf. We went down there. We were able to practice on the field before the game, and it definitely felt a little softer. And about the same style of speed play. So personally, I don't have a difference. Honestly, you feel a lot faster on the artificial turf. But again, there's something about the smell of the grass, getting a chunk in your helmet, ripping it out. There's some aspect to that game that I love. So I'm kind of 50-50 down the line of it. But I definitely prefer grass, and I would hope to see everybody go to grass just because that's my preference. But I do understand the speed aspect of the artificial turf and how some players like maybe Tyreek Hill may prefer it. I'm just speaking out of my tail here, but I don't know. I would prefer, I would assume the speedy guys would want the turf and the more physical guys might want the grass. Wayne, what are your thoughts? Turf versus grass, man.
Well, if consistency is what the NFL wants, if they want every single surface to be the exact same, they're going to have to go with the turf. I really don't think that that's a good thing to have every single stadium field identical. because then it takes away part of that home field advantage. And I may be wrong in assuming this, but I had always assumed that the type of cleats that football players use, you can get different kind of cleats based on what the surface is. You don't have to have big long cleats. You have short ones. I don't think they're quite as technical as the golf cleats that you can switch out the little parts on it. But isn't there a way that they can decide, hey, this is a different type of turf grass, or this grass is super muddy. Let's change cleats. Isn't there some way to do that?
Yeah, you can. There are inserts in cleats. Cleats have come a long way. You can get bigger, deeper ones, lighter ones, metal ones, plastic ones, rubber ones, depending on the artificial surface. I thought it was pretty cool. I was looking up a article on NBC. The two highest stadiums or fields for injuries were grass, and that was, I believe, Allegiant Stadium and Denver's stadium. And then the next highest level of injuries is Mercedes-Benz.
Wow.
So pretty impressive numbers out there. Again, I prefer grass overall. I think it's just something more majestic about the game of football played on grass. But I am totally up in the air. I'd love to see where this go. I don't know if we'll ever have a unified playing surface in the NFL or at any level of football. But it's going to be fun to see where this story branches out. Let's go on from there, talking about our Dirty Birds. They're 3-3. Who's to blame for this lackluster offense, Wayne? Let's ask a fan here. Get your take on this. The offense hasn't been great the last couple games. They're averaging only 16.5 points a game, which is 29th in the NFL, which isn't really good. Wayne, your thoughts on who's to blame for this lackluster offense?
I'd have to say that its genesis is probably somewhere in that locker room. And I don't want to say it's all on the players, but I think there needs to be a coming together of all of the staff and all of the players into a unified front. But I feel like it's a little bit broken right now, and I think it's happening, in the locker room. I don't think it happens on the field or during practice, but it's the jibber jabber after and before.
Yeah, I want to say it's Desmond Ritter, and that's an easy out. And the Falcons fail down the road and draft a quarterback high in the first round next year. But I don't know if that's the case because I've seen some improvements in Desmond Ritter's game. 2 300-yard yards passing in consecutive weeks. He did throw the INT 3 times in the second half and cost what many people thought the Falcons were the game. But personally, I think the play calling by Dave Ragone and Arthur Smith has been atrocious. You have the touchdown, and they go for 2. They even get the pass interference call and saying they could have sent Koo out there again, taking the points, been down 7. It didn't cost them the game, nor was it a real story because they lost by 8 and the interceptions were thrown. But the coaching decisions, getting the play call in, the delay of games, all of that comes into the offensive coordinator and Arthur Smith going down to the quarterback and all this chaos in the background, which resulted in a timeout after a spike and a couple of delayed games, and one where Desmond Ritter cared so much about getting the snap off, he threw the pick in the end zone. So it sped him up, and I think that's a lot of coaching. Coaching, you got to put young players in the position to succeed, and I don't know if they've done that with Desmond Ritter. He's done a good job, again, of getting the ball downfield the last couple of weeks. Drake London's increased his yards per catch and yards per game. So I really don't know if it's Desmond Ritter to blame. Yes, he hasn't looked great at times, but he is still a young quarterback. What is he, 10 games into his career? He's thrown 6 interceptions. He's thrown 6 touchdowns. The Falcons' defense is playing really well. They held Washington to under 200 yards total offense last week and lost the game, which is still mind-blowing to me. So to me, who's to blame for this lackluster offense? It's everyone. It's the coaching staff. It's some of the players. It's the scheme. It's not running the ball at the right times. Look, if we drafted Bijan Robinson in the first round, let's not make him a running back by committee. Let's give him the majority of the reps. I know Algier had 1,000 yards rushing last year, Wayne, but let's face it. We drafted a Cadillac and a Ferrari. Let's use them as the Ferrari first, and let's use the Cadillac, Tyler Algier, the power run game on third downs or second and shorts when you can use them. But let's give Bijan some more carries. And so that's what I say. The blame comes to everyone. His team's 3-3 and very easily could be 4-2. I feel like they should have, could have, would have last week, minus a couple bad throws from a young quarterback. But again, you put your players in the right position, Wayne, anything can happen in this league. They got a big one this weekend. We'll pick it in the pick six, so we'll give our predictions for that later. But yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think there's a lot to blame. I think finger pointing could be at the top, at the OC and the head coaching position for time management and play calling. And then you can also point it easy and say, yes, the young quarterback Desmond Ridder. But that's exactly what he is. He's still a young quarterback who has yet to play a complete season in the NFL. Wayne, any final thoughts on our Dirty Birds before we get into some news and notes around the NFL?
No, I believe we've said all needs to be said.
Yeah, real quick, guys. Julio Jones, former Dirty Bird, has signed a contract expected to be elevated from the practice squad very quickly with the Philadelphia Eagles. And Mecole Hardman, former Georgia Bulldog and New York Jet, is back with the Kansas City Chiefs as they made a trade for their former wide receiver. Today, he will be moving back with Patrick Mahomes this week. That's it for NFL Quick Hits. Let's go ahead and move on to our Pick Six. It's going to be a good one. It's time for the Atlanta Prime Sports Pick Six. We pick 6 football games. Lines and spreads are from Monday per Caesars Sportsbook. This week, it's number 7, Penn State, 6-0, at number 3, Ohio State, also 6-0. In the old horseshoe, Ohio State's 4-point favorites. Over under 46.5. Remember, folks, Mondays spreads. Sometimes it hurts us. Sometimes it helps us. In this case, it kind of stayed the same. Saturday, 12 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fox. We'll go with the 2 guys who aren't here first. Then we'll go Larry. Larry first. He is picking Ohio State to cover, as well as Todd Corder. Wayne, the ball is in your court. You are 1 game behind me in the win column, 22-20 overall. I am 23-19 overall. I went 3-3 last week. No need to say anybody else's record. TC is 17-25. Larry is 19-23. Again, Larry and TC both took Ohio State to cover the 4 points. Wayne, what say you?
I'm taking the Nittany Lions and the points.
Wayne, we think alike.
Oh, man. How am I
We
supposed to
think
get ahead of
alike.
you if you're picking the same?
Well, it's the smart pick. Everybody's saying James Franklin can't win the big game, and to me, that pumps up a team. And here's why I like the Nittany Lions Saturday at noon. Both of these teams match up really well. Penn State's defense allows only 194 yards per game. They are taking care of business with that weak schedule of theirs, while Ohio State gave up just 264 versus maybe arguably a little bit tougher schedule. Both allow under 10 points per game. See where I'm going here? It's literally a mirror image of each other. Something's got to give. This should be a low-scoring game, and if that's the case, give me the guy who's not going to turn the ball over, and that is Nittany Lions quarterback Drew Aller. Has yet to throw an INT this year. I'm taking the Nittany Lions for that reason. So 2 Ohio States, 2 Nittany Lions. This could be one of those games that moves someone in the right direction for this pick 6 here, Wayne. Number 2, number 17, Tennessee, 5-1. traveling to Tuscaloosa, Alabama to take on the number 11 Alabama Crimson Tide. They are 6-1. Alabama is 9.5-point favorites, which is crazy, but the over-under is 48. 3:30 p.m. on CBS. The last time this game will be on CBS. Kind of sad, so get used to it. It's the last time you'll hear it for this game. Pretty sad. Alabama has a top 15 scoring defense, holding opponents to 16 points per game. It's about the only thing they do better than Tennessee. And I will tee this one off. I am taking Tennessee in those 9.5 points. I think this will be a close game. I have a feeling I'm going to get burnt here, but I'm tired of getting burnt by Bama. I took them against Texas. I took them against another team. I'm just not doing it again. I'm not getting burnt again. Tennessee and the 9.5 points on the road. I will take it. Wayne, what say you?
Well, I think you know what I'm fixing to do.
And the points.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to take Tennessee in those points on that one. Alabama's been winning games by a whole lot less than 9.5 points. So, again, I know a lot of teams have said this. Hey, this is our one chance to beat Alabama. This, again, is a chance for Tennessee to beat them back to back. So let's see what happens. I'm picking Tennessee.
Both these teams sacked the quarterback extremely well. Both of them are in the top 5 in that category. So this could be a low-scoring game. And to me, if it's low-scoring, it benefits Tennessee and the fact they can run the football. They're a top 10 rushing team in the country. And Alabama has had struggles this year stopping the run, especially versus South Florida earlier in the year. On the road, they gave up over 150 yards rushing on the ground there. Todd takes Tennessee. Tennessee and TC are going together. Tennessee in the points for TC. Larry is taking the Crimson Tide to cover. He might be right on this one. Like I said, this is a weird spread. Those are the ones that get me. Our third game of the day, I'm wearing the shirt number 14, the Utah Utes. 5-1. Traveling to Los Angeles, California to take on the number 18 Southern California Trojans. They're 6-1. Southern Cal 6.5-point favorites. The over-under in this one's 56. 8:00 p.m. Saturday on Fox. Wayne, what say you?
Well, USC is really tough at home, and most of the time I will take points, but not this time. I'm taking USC to cover.
Yeah, they are really good at home. Caleb Williams is an extremely good quarterback. He might get back-to-back Heismans for the first time since Archie Griffin. He is playing at an elite level. And here's the big kicker with this game. Utah sacks the quarterback at an elite level as well. 22 sacks on the season. The D keeps them in ball games, holding opponents to just over 12 points per game. But here's the but, and it's a big but. If Cam Rising doesn't play, this Utah passing attack is weak. 122nd out of 133 teams. If he doesn't play, the Utes don't have a chance. And I am going for the Utes because of the shirt I wear and a dear friend we are always thinking about in Utah. Shout out to Miss Natalie. So I am taking USC to cover. I'm not happy about the pick, but it's only because my guy Cam Rising is possibly going to miss the game and possibly may take a medical red shirt, which would be great to see him back in a Utah Utes uniform the next season. That ends our college games. Larry is taking USC to cover as well, and TC is taking Utah and the points. Let's go to our NFL game. Falcons 3-3 at Buccaneers 3-2. Tampa Bay's a 2.5-point favorite. The over/under in that one's 38.5. Again, Sunday 1:00 p.m. Eastern time on Fox. The Falcons and Bucks lost to the Lions 20-6. Both teams. Look it up. According to that stat, this game's going to be a tie, and that's what I'm sticking with. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not calling it a tie, folks. This was a hard coin to flip, Wayne. This one's really tough. Baker Mayfield's played pretty good football, but both these offenses are very similar. Right around 16, 18 points for Atlanta and 18 points, I believe, for Tampa Bay. Both these teams rely on defense. Atlanta is top 5 in defense in terms of yards per game, and that's why I'm taking the Dirty Birds. I think Jesse Bates is going to make a play on Baker Mayfield late in the game to flip the momentum. Give me the Falcons and those points on the road, Wayne. What say you?
Well, of course, I'm taking the Falcons. But I will say this as just as a side note. If the Falcons lose this game, somebody better lose their job.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I've said that in our Dirty Birds segment. I don't like the coaching right now. I don't think they're getting plays in. I don't think they're putting in the scheme to let these free agents that we got play ball. I mean, the Falcons have 6 first-round draft picks on the offensive side of the football. Something should be clicking, and I think it happens this weekend. I do. I think they get a little bit better on the offensive side of the ball. If Desmond Ridder takes care of the football, they should win this one. The defense has played well enough to win every game. Let's hope the offense can help them out. Todd's taking the Bucs to cover, and Larry's shocking me and taking the Bucs to cover at home as well. Wayne, looks like we're sticking with our Falcons. We're riding or dying. I do have a little homer bias there, but there's something about this Falcons D that makes me want to pick the Falcons each and every week because they're in every ball game minus the Lions game.
Yeah, well, and on a side note on that, if the Falcons lose and someone gets fired, I'm not going to be the one getting fired.
Correct. Game number 5 of the Pick 6. The Detroit Lions, been a fun pick all year. They're 5-1 at the Ravens 4-2. This may be the game of the weekend if it weren't for the massive Sunday Night Football matchup. Baltimore is 3-point favorites. Over/under in this one's 42. This is also 1 o'clock on FOX. This one is another. All these NFL games are really close. Right now, I have the Ravens to cover this game. Simply, I think the home field advantage will be there. I think Todd Monken and this offense will really start to click. And I'm really expecting Odell Beckham Jr. to give this offense the push that they signed him for. And I really do think Mark Andrews has a breakout game this season. He hasn't quite had that huge Mark Andrews stamp game yet, whether you're a fantasy football player or just watching the old Ravens. Give me the Ravens to cover in this one. It's really tough to go on the road and win versus a former MVP and these Ravens and Roquan Smith on the defensive side of that football. Coach Harbaugh's going to have them ready to go. Ravens cover. Wayne, what say you?
Well, before I give my pick here, I'm going to need some novice help. Explain the push to me.
So the push would be if the Ravens won by 3 and the Lions lost by 3. That would be a push. There was neither covered nor point spread. Does that make sense? So if it hits the number, it's a push.
Okay. And so if I say I'm taking the Lions and I want the push, if they end up losing by 3, do I still win?
So a push is a tie. It gets us all off the hook with the tie. So if you take the Lions in the point, you still get a tie if it's 3. If I take the Ravens to cover and it's 3, it's a push. So push is a tie.
Well, I'm taking the Lions anyway.
I like it. They're hot. They're America's pick right now. Coach Campbell's got everybody ready to go. Run through a wall. And look, I'm Ross St. Brown. Jared Goff is playing at an elite level. Montgomery, the run game's there. It's fun to watch Sam Laporta play tight end, I'll tell you that much. And Aiden Hutchinson is just getting after it on this defense. They're really fun to watch. I thought they were going to be good. I didn't know they were going to be this elite, and they may be one of the better teams in the NFC. We'll see how it plays out over the rest of the year. But I am taking the Ravens and to cover. You're taking the Lions and the points. Todd's obviously taking the Lions and the points. And Larry's taking the Lions and the points. You guys are taking the road dog here. The final game of the weekend, which is the best game of the weekend. These are the two best. Then we threw in the Falcons game in there, whichever one you want to call that one. Dolphins 5-1 at Eagles 5-1. Philly is a 1.5 favorite. Over under in this one's the highest of the weekend at 52. Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. on NBC. Larry is taking the Eagles to cover. Todd is taking the Eagles to cover. Wayne, who you taking?
Normally, I would take the Eagles simply because there are some University of Memphis players on their team. Not this week, because Perry, the trombone player, is a huge Dolphins fan. And whenever we have rehearsal on Sunday afternoon, the first thing he does when that rehearsal ends is go grab his phone and check the score. And I'm picking the Dolphins for Perry.
I'm going with the Dolphins and the points as well, Wayne. Look, Tua's playing at an unbelievable level. The best he's ever played, college or pro. This is the first time Tua and Jalen will meet up in the pro level game. Lots of storylines here. Two high-powered offenses. The Hurts push. To me, Coach McDaniel is already the coach of the year with what he's done in Miami. There's lots of good storylines in this game, and the best one to me would be if the Dolphins went up there and won the game, and I think they will. I think Tua's going to throw to Tyreek Hill a couple times. I think they'll open up the can on the offensive side of the football. This will be a shootout. I think this will be the most exciting game of the weekend for a reason. Dolphins and the points. That concludes our pick six. Our final thoughts for the night. I'll tee it off here. College and NFL coaches, listen up. Stop going for it on fourth down unless it's absolutely necessary. If you're in field goal range and it's close, take the points. Two instances over the weekend, Wayne, I'd like to highlight. Oregon versus Washington and New York Giants versus the Buffalo Bills. Both into the first half situations. Both Oregon and the New York Giants were inside their opponent's 5-yard line with fourth and goal opportunities. Both were down by one score. If both coaches go for the field goal and make it, both teams are kicking game-winning field goals as time expires on the team's final drive because they had that opportunity. In Oregon's case, a game-winning field goal attempt with the tie game. So a lot less pressure there. So please, take the points unless you have to go for it to extend the game, like down 2 scores, more scores, whatever. Please, take the points. I'm tired of seeing these coaches blow opportunities late in the game because they didn't take one early on in the game. Wayne, your final thought.
Well, I don't know that I really have a final thought. I guess I could throw in there Memphis is traveling down to the Steel City, Birmingham, to play UAB this weekend. I look for that to be a good game, and I'll certainly be keeping track of that myself.
Yes, the old Trent Dilfer Bowl down there. We'll be paying attention to that one. Go Memphis Tigers. For TC Todd Corder on vacation, Larry Gardner at his son's game. Hopefully they pulled it out in overtime. For Wayne, our fabulous producer in Memphis, Tennessee, I'm JJ Jurjevich. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, and give us a follow or something like that. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the weekend of football and Major League postseason baseball. Get you one, ladies and gentlemen.